Welcome to Market Buzz. I'm Greg Schnell, a Canadian technician and host of the Market Buzz. Each show we do a deep dive into different industries using weekly charts to see what is happening on a long timeline. Please follow me on Twitter at Schnell Investor, and you can also find my blogs on gregschnell.ca as well as stockcharts.com. So semis are a little light, and I'll show you what I mean here. We're talking about semiconductors, obviously, but even the rails and the transports are starting to get a little light. The trucks are okay, but the rails, obviously the airlines have been hit, but the rails are starting to make me wonder a little bit. So rails and semis are worrying me. We're going to go through the Nasdaq 100. There's a couple of interesting trends I see growing in there, so I think you'll enjoy that. The slope of hope is flattening, and I'll show you what I mean, just drawing some quick trend lines. GregSchnell.ca, the new website, is open, and I now have a second chartered market technician on the site with me, Mr. Dwight Galusha, and he's going to be populating new scan ideas every day on the website. So hopefully you'll find that a little bit more interesting for members. So should be pretty good. Anyway, let me head over and start working through this. So this is kind of the thing Dwight's going to put together, just a nice chart with ticker symbols, both US and Canadian, and just some of the interesting setups that are out there. Here's Facebook as an example, and he's got a few more in this article, but that's what we're going to, so Dwight's going to bring that to the website, and hopefully you'll get to see some of his great work. He's a really good friend of mine. So here is the Nasdaq 100, and what I want to show on this list, first of all, is let's just go to the summary mode. And by looking at the summary mode, the one thing I noticed is the lack of chip names at the top. And there's a few. NVIDIA and Advanced Micro Devices are here. And then what I found was as I got down into the list kind of in the 40 to 50 level, there started to be a whole bunch showed up based on scooter ranking. So I was a little surprised that the semis were that far down in the list. Anyway, I think there's some good ideas in here, and I hope you can see how the texture changes of the list as we work through it. So let's quickly do that. Oh, the other thing I wanted to quickly show you was as I mentioned, the slope of hope. Let's just go get that chart quickly. And it is hiding in here. So on this chart, this is the month-to-date performance of the S&P 500, so April 3rd. And what we see is we had an uptrend going, and now we're working on a little bit of a flatter model. And just over time, we need to watch and see if that's going to start flattening out on us. Now, if I go to the year-to-date performance, what you see here is roughly back on April the 9th, I'll call that right in here, we made this kind of a key level, and there's a bit of a higher spike on here too, but we have ground sideways, and then last week we had a sudden surge up and immediately gave it back, and now we're back in this range. And so it's this range in here, I'll call it 15 to 11%, so kind of a 4% range that we're battling back and forth in. This is the uptrend line that I mentioned on that other chart. And then here we also have a line that comes in here that shows just the slope starting to flatten out. The advanced decline line data has not yet. And if you look up here on the right, you can see we had a lower slope going into this breakdown before. So let's not get too worried about it. But what we want to notice is just that the slope is starting to change. And I would say, if we got down a lot flatter than here, that would start to take on a whole different texture. So that's what we're watching for in general. If I switch that from performance numbers into actual values, what you see here is this 2750 to 2850, that kind of range on the S&P 500. And we tagged the 61.8% retracement pretty much exactly so far. I'm not a big Fibonacci guy. Obviously, there's lots of great technicians that are. I would just say that one thing I'm noticing is we haven't made a whole bunch of progress, even though we've had all of the big technology leaders announce, and so far the high has been the Fed meeting. Anyway, that just to put those two things into context, because I said I would at the beginning. Here's Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, and this chart's just been nice up and away. Lots of overlapping bars in wide in wide prices. So in a week, you're moving $75, $100. These are pretty hard to hold. So here's 500 to 575, and all the way back to 500, and now back to 575. Sounds like an auctioneer: 500, 575, 500, 575. But these numbers are holding up. And again, the chart's got a nice trend up, staying above its 10-week moving average. Looks really nice. Notice the volume dropping off a little. That's not that worrisome to me. Of course, it's going to drop off after the volatile recession we had. It's getting back into kind of the normal trading range for that, so that's okay. Tesla is another volatile animal, roughly $100 moves every week, and if you can stomach that, that's very courageous. So here's 869 down in here into the 690s, and then back up almost $100 again off that low. So these big wide ranging swings are pretty hard. Now, we were going parabolic with Tesla at the time. We pulled back, and now we've got to run up again here. There is a lower slope line that I think I should put on this chart. If Tesla rolls over right here on the full stochastic, I can't. That is much more bearish than normal. So we do not want to see that happen. And obviously, with these parabolic moves, it's possible. Notice how the momentum is so low on this peak compared to the prior peak. So it's one thing to watch. And again, I'm impressed with anybody who can hold through these massive swings of $150 each way each day. It's got to change their portfolio meaningfully. Symantec, nice uptrend here in momentum and holding up nicely, even if this relative strength line flattened out a bit. But notice how the price action is a little smoother in here and probably a little easier to hold since the rally began. Breaking out to new all-time highs, that's a pretty nice chart. Norton LifeLock. I guess I should have changed that name. And just so you know, you can do that right in here when you're in chart mode and lock. There we go. So that's fine. Here's Netflix, uptrend going on in relative strength, really helpful. Same thing on the PPO. Price has broken out, but since the breakout has not done anything. So just something to watch for. I do not want to see the relative strength or the PPO start to fade. That would be a big problem, I think, for Netflix. NVIDIA is trying to break it out to new all-time highs again here. I've drawn a line on the PPO. I used to have one a little tighter, and it obviously had the drop show up in here, and that drop's meaningful from 315 to 180. Now we're back up in that 300 level, and it's been a major resistance area all along here. Just keep watching it and make sure it actually gets through. Full stochastic looks like it wants to roll over here, and I see these uptrends on the chart. That uptrend is obviously very helpful. And when you see it over here, when this kind of an uptrend broke, that was a good clue to get out of NVIDIA, and that would have saved you, in that case, $160. So we want to see that same thing hold up here. But as I mentioned, lots of the semis are kind of falling down the list, so want to keep track of that. Here's Advanced Micro Devices, and it had broken out to new highs or near new highs, pulled all the way back, and is now trying to hold the 10-week. That relative strength line is still holding up, but the full stochastic's already rolled over under 80. Typically, we don't like to see that. That's what happened back in here, just got up there and then rolled over. You want the momentum to kind of surge it up to new all-time highs and then just keep going. We've got a little downslope in momentum here, so if this is to roll over, this is a problem. If this can break out from here, that's pretty bullish. I have set the uptrend line below the March lows, which is quite a bit of room to pull the stock back. We were at 58. It would drop it all the way to 40, so a 30% haircut. But again, you're above the 10-week line. With Vertex Pharmaceuticals, this chart's choppy lately. It's just been trading in that sideways range I kind of showed you with the S&P 500. But here, 4 or 5 weeks, just really back and forth with not much progress or progress. The uptrend is holding here, so everything looks okay on the chart. I would just say it hasn't done anything since the big breakout. It's kind of jogged sideways. It is at the top of the range, which is nice. Okay, so here's Citrix Systems, and they've got GoToMeeting and things like that. So this broke out to new highs 4 or 5 weeks ago, and then it's just been kind of drifting lower. There was a brief stab at a new high 2 weeks ago and then pulled back. So I still like the chart. Everything's trending higher. Nothing wrong with that. Amazon, what a great chart. This is pushing up higher here. Got the StockCharts technical ranking up in the top right hand corner. It's a $1 trillion stock, and it's a $1 trillion stock and still holding up in that area. So that's amazing, just with the size of the market cap. We do have this push up and then 3 weeks sideways here. That's just could be a bull flag, and then it's on its way for more energy up. I do not want to see the relative strength start to break down on these major names, and the reason for that is everybody's sitting in these stocks. There was a great chart by Todd Sohn on Dave Keller's Final Bar show, and he just showed how the money that's moved into the Nasdaq 100 is all just hanging there. And so if all of a sudden you start to see a big exit out of there, trying to find new buyers, I guess it would be interesting. Maybe it'll just rotate into a different group of people, but it's definitely a busy spot. PayPal is breaking out to new all-time highs right here. So that's a very bullish chart. Really like that one. Relative strength is picking up speed, starting to break out on the scooter ranking to one of the top ranked areas. That is a wonderful thing to see, and it's made a dip below zero. Most stocks did on momentum, but it's already turned its way back up. I really like the breakout to higher highs. So this first page is a pretty nice place to look. Activision holding up here. I really like these gaming stocks. They look like they're ready to go on a nice big run. So here's the SCTR ranking, and it's been sitting up here, for almost 6 months. But really, the stock didn't break out to new all-time highs until just 4 weeks ago, and it's basically jumped up on earnings or whatever, and bull flagged all the way here. So maybe it's about to start heading higher. I do like the chart shape here. It's very bullish, and you've got a nice uptrend line going on all of these, and the relative strength against the S&P 500 is accelerating. So very nice. Microsoft Corporation, you can see big uptrend in everything here. The one thing I notice on this one, notice the low wave here. So you've had the rally and we're starting to pick up, and it's still trending up. There's nothing wrong with this chart. The one thing I would watch for is all of a sudden if it started to roll over here, and it hasn't. But you get this kind of big down flush, and then on your next rally, you don't have a lot of momentum. And again, you don't have to sell the stock. You can buy a put or some method of covering it in the option market, whatever you'd like to do. The one thing I would just say is when your momentum drops this quick and doesn't regain itself, it's helpful to just stay safe and make sure that you're protecting it. Again, we don't know how hard this situation is going to be with all the unemployment. So try and make sure you're following along with that. Again, the full stochastic trying to roll over a little bit here. So Insight, this chart's just a little bit too choppy for me. It is making new 2-year highs, so that's a very bullish statement. Obviously, somebody likes it. Came up here 3 weeks ago and is just bull flagging. Electronic Arts breaking out to new highs, and I really like this chart again. Came up, fell down in the overall stock market drop here, and then bounced off the zero level and started to head higher. That's very bullish. Look at the stock chart technical ranking starting to take off and the relative strength really starting to improve. So I like that area. Adobe Systems, this chart's a little more worrying, same as Microsoft from the momentum perspective. So it's pulled back, still bounced above zero, very bullish. Just want to make sure that it doesn't kind of go flat here and then start to drop away. So I've drawn a loose trend line in here. It's really not holding under any sort of touch points. I've just drawn it up here kind of off the lows, and we'll see. But it's this full stochastic where it's starting to wane before getting back up into the strong level that we'd like to see, and where Adobe's used to spending most of its time. So anyway, it's a chart worth watching. eBay, I'm trying to break out through this big long 2-year trend line. I really like the chart shape here. The scooter ranking has moved up into the top half of the panel. There's an uptrend here, and relative strength has moved into a new multi-year high, so that's very bullish. And the PPO is picking up pace, and I like the fact that it's broken its downtrend, unlike some of those other stocks like Microsoft and Adobe. This one looks like it's ready to pick up speed. So eBay looks pretty interesting here. Cadence Design System starting to break out to new highs. It's just kind of flagging here as it's trying to get through. Again, here's another one where you see the momentum wane, and then all of a sudden it dropped pretty hard, obviously fell below all our trend lines. Has bounced back up, and now we'll just see if it's got the energy to kind of keep going like it did back here. Very bullish move then. Can it keep doing that, or does it lose its momentum right away here? So watching that one a little bit. Mercado Libre hasn't done anything, just kind of in the, I'll call it the range of where it's traded over the last 52 weeks. Downtrend in momentum, and it hasn't really started to spike up by any stretch, but it is moving up, and it's rated 0. If this was to roll over here, that would be a big warning sign to me. I'd be very cautious on something rolling over below 0 after having this big pullback. Full stochastic looked like it wants to stop at 50, and one of the reasons I want to talk about the full sto is what you see in a bull market is it usually stays above the 50 and makes a very strong move. When it goes down below and turns back up and then makes a run all the way to top, that's bullish. If it gets to the 50 and rolls over, that can be really painful trading, as you see back in this period for almost 6 months in 2017. So just watch the full stochastic to see if it's got enough momentum. Apple, I mean, their momentum curve is the same as Microsoft, where it's pulled down hard and looks like it could roll down again. I mean, they're going to buy their own stock back. They just borrowed money to buy stock back. So whatever, it's not going to fall very far. I don't expect it to break this red trend line. So if you can live with that sort of pullback, no big deal. JD.com still trending up. Lots of overlapping price bars here, not really very clean. I will say the momentum has slowed recently, which is no surprise based on what we've just been through. As long as this uptrend can kind of hold here, I don't want to see this to start to tail off very sharply. I think it was testing prior highs, so let's make sure it gets through them. Biomarine Pharmaceutical, this one has been really choppy and wavy lately. It was 68 all the way up to 99, which was a new 52-week high very briefly, pulled back under 90 and is now holding in that top range. Let's just see if it can maintain some momentum up here. Again, I don't want to see this make a lower high in momentum and roll back over. So, the chart isn't that great. This is kind of the price action it's traded in for 4 or 5 years. I agree the recent spurt in the last 4 weeks has been very strong, but again, it's just kind of 4 years at this range. Gilead has had a nice breakout. Considering all the attention around Resveratrol or whatever that drug is, I actually thought it would hold up better than this and keep going. So maybe I'm expecting too much, but it shot up to 85 and keeps putting in inside bars here. So we'll see which way this wants to break, but it is holding the 10 weeks so far and trading, I'll call it, up in a new 2-year high range or even going back further. So very strong company, very strong chart. I like the volume that's come in here. I don't get the feeling it's going to break down right away, but I am surprised. I guess it's just the volatility of pharmaceuticals. Facebook had put in a nice push here, and obviously on earnings last week had a big thrust. PPO went below 0, is now heading up very strongly. Relative strength just hit a new 1 or 2 year high here. This is very bullish. When you see that, you probably expect this to go higher, and I think everybody sitting on their Facebook pages at home, probably a good clue. For synopsis, what we've got is a big downtrend in momentum here. I do want to see this keep going. I don't want to see it roll over and double top right here. So that one's worth watching. Autodesk, trading horizontal here for 2 years, hasn't really done anything. Brief push before the COVID-19 pullback, and now we're sitting right on this horizontal level. We'll see if it's got any strength. Again, I do not want to see the momentum indicator turn back negative very quickly. That's usually quite uncomfortable. Amgen, pushing to a new high just a couple of weeks ago. This chart looks great. I will say there's a very low momentum at this point. So if it trades sideways for another couple of weeks, this chart's actually going to roll over down here. That's not the kind of price action we want to see as it breaks out to new highs. So chart's okay, nothing wrong with it yet, but just keep an eye on it. Charter Communications, again, trying to test prior highs with lower momentum. Apple, Microsoft, all of those charts are very similar. The relative strength versus the S&P 500 continues to be pretty strong. I think one of the things, again, you're just testing a prior high. Always want to watch that very closely. Skyworks right back into this 5-year range. It was trading in, briefly made a nice push into new high ground, rolled over on COVID. Now the real question is, can it get it moxie back and get up into that top range? PPO right at 0. So as I've said before, I don't want to see it roll over there. So we'd like to see it keep pushing and not really continue to bull flag. VeriSign, big uptrend here. We got below it, came back, and are now trying to hold that uptrend line. Here's a downtrend in momentum that was in place before COVID. If it's just going to roll over here, this would be like a, kind of a long major rolling top. Not that that's what I'm expecting, but just be cautious. Anytime you see your momentum have trouble getting back above 0, better place to be cautious. NetEase holding, trying to break out to new, 5-year highs or whatever. We'll just see if it's got the momentum. So far, it's making a lower wave here. Most things pulled back on that COVID. Now the real question is, can it start to thrust back up? Looking in on Verisk Analytics, this chart's got the low momentum going here and is now just kind of staying below 0. It's still nothing wrong with the chart yet, but I would just say it's got a lot of caution on it considering a lot of other things have thrusted higher. Lululemon is a chart that I'm really interested in. The full stochastic has already rolled over. The relative strength trend line has been holding up very, very closely. I would just say, and I think it's a wonderful company, but I would just say this momentum rolling over at 0, this is the kind of thing you would avoid, like happened in 2017, where all of a sudden it fell down hard. Intuit, just kind of trading in the same range it's been in for a year. Nothing great, lower momentum, not that bad. Here's ASML, the chip manufacturer. You see this big uptrend in momentum holding relative strength versus the S&P 500. It's just this lower momentum. So here's Google, and what you see is you come up and we're right at 0 here in terms of momentum. I still like the stock. I think this is a breakout of a big base. I like everything about it. I do not want to see the full stochastic roll over here. And again, a lot of these big names, I've been saying that. Apple, Microsoft, Adobe, Google. So just something to watch. IDEX Laboratories, all sitting here right up against all-time highs. Momentum was waning. It's right at the 0 level. Again, we want to see it get its final thrust and push right through. T-Mobile, gently sloping up. Nothing wrong with the chart. Just, I don't know if there's anything there for me one way or the other. From Fastenal, this has been outperforming all through this year, which is pretty interesting. Momentum has been waning down in here. I would say it's back up to the range it was trading at October to December and didn't have a lot of horsepower back then. So the real question is, can it start to get going now, or is this going to roll over? You can see that this is the first time the wave got this low in the last 2 years, sitting below 0. Take-Two Interactive Software, another gaming company, sitting right in the range of the last 2 years, but both the other two, Electronic Arts and can't remember it. We'll come across the chart hopefully. But you can see it's trying to break out here. I think if any of these gaming stocks start to rock, they're probably worth getting on the train with them. Liberty, this chart's trending down, nothing really to talk about. Okay, let's quickly surge forward. I just want to give you an example of what the difference is when we get into kind of the lower group of the Nasdaq 100. What you see here is PACCAR, and they don't look like they've got enough momentum to get back above their 40 weeks. So that's a trucking supply company, Peterbilt and that kind of thing. Mondelez International rolling over, doesn't look very strong. Broadcom stalling at its 40-week moving average, stalling down here under zero. PPO rolling over. So this, this is kind of one of the semiconductors I was referring to. Intuitive Surgical has been just basically jumped up off the low, went sideways for 6 weeks. Maybe that's because all the elective surgeries have been canceled. Don't know. Anyway, keep an eye on it. It's not dropping, but it sure isn't climbing either. Automatic data processing looks a lot like that intuitive chart right above. Basically jumped up and went sideways. Full stochastic looks like it wants to die here at 50, so not good. Ulta Beauty continues to make lower lows, lower highs, and really hasn't had a big pickup in momentum. I realize the stock moved a long way in a few days, but you were at 300, now you're at 200. Has it got enough momentum to get above the 40-week moving average? It really needs to start thrusting. The full stochastic looks like it wants to roll over here. I would have thought as retail opens this would start to improve, but not yet. Here's another semiconductor down here in the bottom. Micron, again, trending sideways, hasn't done much since the rally started, and the PPO is still stuck below zero, so nothing really comforting there. Microchip Technology, another semiconductor, same story. PPO really trapped down here low. It did have a nice push last week and then gave it all back quickly, so it's kind of been 4 weeks sideways. JB Hunt, same thing, starting to roll over, break the uptrend. PPO rolling over below zero, not comforting for trucking. Alexion Pharmaceuticals, you can see a big downtrend here. At least it got above its 40-week, but you can see it quickly gave that up and is now moving back. So I think this rolls over below zero, not a good place on the chart. And again, we aren't into the weak stuff yet. Starbucks is one of those charts that sets up more interesting for me for a couple of reasons. I like this down slope in momentum, and what I'd like to see now is that it finally gets momentum to cross back above it, and that would probably give the stock a whole new trend change, because it was starting to trend lower since August of last year. And if it could finally just break this downtrend, I mean, they have the electronic ordering and all that stuff all figured out. So perhaps this stock can finally turn when they get the stores open and get remotivated to the upside. But for almost a year here, well, for 9 months for sure, the stock has been trending down and we haven't made it back through the 40-week moving average. Do not want to see the full stochastic roll over. And for relative strength, it doesn't seem to want to outperform the S&P 500. Align Technology, big downtrend here. Obviously concerning. It doesn't look like it's going to get anything going there. CSX, a railway, is below the upsloping trend line and looks like it's going to fail right here at the 40-week moving average. Again, full stochastic rolling over. Big place for caution. So thanks for taking the time to join me on Market Buzz. Market Buzz airs Wednesday and Friday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can also see the recording on StockCharts TV YouTube page. Thank you for taking the time. I think I said Wednesday and Friday. It's on Wednesdays at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, Grayson Rose here with StockCharts.com. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember, if you did, give us a like down below. Leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily content from an incredible collection of technical analysts and financial minds. We'll see you back here very soon. Happy charting, my friends.